Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am Joe2 and thank you for joining me today on this fine Monday of July as we get through this process and try to get better. Uh, I'm here today with a bunch of sports news. Of course, review of UFC 251 on Saturday. I got some news about football. Yeah, news on more players opting out of the MLB season, and I got finally some NHL news uh, today for the podcast. Uh, so thank you all for joining me. Of course, like and subscribe if you're new. Um, Otherwise, anyway, thank you. So let's get into the podcast today, shall we? So, firstly, probably the biggest news happening uh, last week was Patrick Mahomes' new contract with the Chiefs. That is, so he has 2 more years left on his rookie deal, his last year, and his fifth-year option, plus a 10-year extension worth up to 503 million, over $500 million. So that's pretty big, obviously, if you're a Chiefs fan. I mean, right now, he is the best quarterback in the NFL. Uh, and of course, they want extension was going to come sooner or later. Obviously, sooner is what came. Um, I mean, his first 2 years in the NFL, I mean, he was the MVP last year, the surprising MVP. I mean, obviously, if Mahomes didn't have that epic season last year, over 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards, Drew Brees would have had his first MVP season and his first MVP. However, that was not to be. And now, last season, or excuse me, so that was the season prior to last season. And then last season, he still had a pretty good season, pretty solid season. Obviously, against Broncos, it was scary because, of course, he tore his kneecap or he dislocated his kneecap. And then, luckily, the Chiefs were able to still stay competitive um, in those games against the the Packers and the Vikings. And I believe it was the Broncos again. Uh, they managed to stay competitive, and Mahomes, of course, he came back, led them to the playoffs. Of course, they needed that help against Miami, or from Miami against the Patriots, Week 17, which boosts them in second seed, that bye. They were down 24 against the Texans, came all the way back. They were down 10 twice against the Titans in the AFC title game, came back. They were down 10 in the Super Bowl against the Niners, and they came back. So, well deserved. I mean, the only thing you can really compare it to is Kurt Warner's first year as a starter, really. Because, I mean, he was MVP and Super Bowl MVP in the same season, and has been the last one to do that. So, I mean, go on the Chiefs. I looked into the details. Mahomes is going to be making not as much for the first few years, which allows obviously Kelsey's contract is going to be up in a couple of years. Hill, yes, he got an extension, but his contract is also up in a couple of years. Watkins, yes, they restructured the deal, but next year he's a free agent. Honey Badger, Chris Jones, obviously, but I mean, we'll have to see where it goes from here. I mean, in my opinion, if they don't become a dynasty, I believe this contract may be all for naught because they got everything set up for the Chiefs right now. I mean, besides Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in the AFC, we relatively got the Bills, who are unproven. You got the Colts, who in my opinion are going to be the first seed in the AFC this season. But Philip Rivers, he's aging. Might be his last year as starter, who knows. Big Ben coming off an injury. The Browns unproven. The Bills, like I said, are unproven. The Texans have been internally falling apart. And you look at their division, it's a bunch of unproven but solid teams. So we'll have to see. But yeah, if they don't win 2 more titles in the span of next 4 years, I feel that this contract may be a little all for naught, considering all they have going for them right now. So that's my opinion on that. And as far as Dak Prescott goes, doesn't really mean anything. I would actually predict with the franchise tag and with the talks that they're not close on an extension. I would predict that Dak is getting traded this year. That's my prediction. I think Dak will get traded this year. They will go to Dalton. That's my opinion. I said this I commented this on a post the other day. Dak had one of the best one of the best rosters in the league last year. They started 3-0. Carson Wentz. He and the Eagles went 1-2, and their defense or their whole roster fell apart. And Dak and the Eagles, 8-8, missed playoffs. Carson Wentz, basically, and what was left of the Eagles, went 9-7, won the division. And you could argue that if Wentz was healthy, they may or may not have came back against Seattle in that playoff game. And who knows what happens afterwards. But yeah, that's how I feel. My opinion on Dak still stays the same. He's a $25 to $30 million quarterback. In between, he's in that span of Derek Carr to Matt Ryan. That's my opinion. And some may agree, some may not. That's your right to disagree or agree with me, but that's my opinion. So we cut from that we'll go from that to news on a couple more NBA players opting out of the resumed NBA season that is going to recap in a couple weeks. So the Brooklyn Nets have been falling apart. KD is not healthy. Kyrie is not going to play. DeAndre Jordan opted out. I mean, they had more injuries. And now Spencer Dinwiddie opted out as well, although they signed Jamal Crawford. And the Wizards, this is probably the biggest. I mean, yes, Victor Oladipo is the best player that has opted out so far, but the Pacers went through most of the season, the majority of the season, without him. So, I mean, they are prepared and they are still a playoff team without him. So that says to the level of the Pacers. Now, as far as the Wizards and Nets go, the Nets, yes, they're in 7th seed. They can only they'll either stay and probably get deplored. They get swept by either Milwaukee, the Raptors, the Celtics, or whomever, or they fall out of the picture. As far as the Wizards go, I mean, they have been disappointing ever since a couple of years ago when John Wall was healthy, Bradley Beal, and they were a prime playoff team against the Celtics. They have not been the same. Yes, they're the 9th seed. They're a couple games out of the playoff picture, but I mean, realistically, they could sneak into the playoffs, but then, of course, either the Pistons or the Nets would have to fall out. And the prize for that is probably getting swept by, again, either Milwaukee, Boston, or Toronto. So, I mean, the prize is not really that enjoyable. Although I will say Orlando and Brooklyn last year in the playoffs, they both managed to upset Philadelphia and Toronto in the first game of their series in the playoffs. So, I mean, anything can happen. That's what I'll say. Now, on to the recap, my little recap of UFC 251 that happened this past Saturday. Now, I won't go over every fight, but I'll go some of the main points. For starters, Volkanovski on the prelims was knocked out in the second round by this newcomer, and Volkan. In the span after he knocked out Jimmy Manuwa is kind of incensed that he's the new scariest dude in the light heavyweight division. However, of course, he faced DC in a title-losing effort, and then he has not really been much the same since. He'll have his power, but he was number 7, and then he got knocked out, so he got a new contender, obviously, but Volkan, yikes. Next, we cut to, on the main card, the 3 title fights that happened. So first, Peter Yan versus Jose Aldo for the vacant 135 Bantamweight Championship that was vacated by Henry Cejudo, the King of Cringe. Peter Yan, obviously he debuted in the UFC 2 years ago, and his stock has been on an upward slope ever since. He has just been knocking out, knocking out, knocking out. He was on a 6-fight win streak, and although looked good in this fight, he looked good. They both had their moments. They both applied pressure, but in the end, in the 5th round, Peter Yan stopped Aldo on the ground with pretty good ground and pound. I mean, Aldo, of course, he had a long reign as the 145-pound king, starting from the WC to the UFC. Obviously, in 13 seconds, it was taken away from him by Conor McGregor. Sorry if I don't snap that well. It's just been a thing. But yeah, he got swept by Conor McGregor. And then, yes, he managed to beat Frankie Edgar to win back the interim, or to win the interim title, which became the real title once again. But then, I mean, he lost twice to Max Holloway. He did beat Jeremy Stevens and Renato Moicano in 2 fights. And then he lost to prior to this, while many people still think he won against Marlon Moraes. It was still a loss, and he lost here again to Peter Yan. I mean, although he's still, I believe, in his early 30s, but I mean, he may be worn out. That's my thing. His time looks like it has passed, I would say. Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling right now seems like the fight to make at 135. I think it should have been made. This fight should have happened already, but I would like to see, because Sterling has piled up wins after wins after wins, called out, called out, called out, and nothing. So, can't wait to see that fight. Hopefully it happens soon. Excuse me, that's the fight to make. Next up was the co-main event. Controversial Alexander Volkanovski, the Great, versus Max Blast Holloway, the rematch. I mean, obviously, in the first fight, I mean, when I saw it, it wasn't that really close. I mean, Volkanovski, he landed a bunch of leg kicks. He controlled the pace, in my opinion. Here was different. It was closer. Yes, Volkanovski landed still some leg kicks. He wasn't really strong in the fact that he tried to take Max down a bunch. However, Holloway landed some good strikes. He knocked down Volkanovski twice with an uppercut and a head kick. However, the judges, they saw it Volkanovski's way. I mean, look, judging in the UFC hasn't been bad since. Now, some will say they saw it really close. Some will say they saw it for Max all the way. I mean, not everybody's going to have the same opinion. That's what I'll say. But I mean, judging in the UFC has always been a problem. Uh, so much the last few years. I mean, it's just been a real dang problem that needs to be fixed. Uh, I mean, good for Volkanovski. Uh, he's trying to say like Alexander Great, really, in the fact that Alexander Great didn't lose, and you can see Alexander the Great Volkanovski hasn't lost technically, but so good for Volkanovski. Where does he go from here, or who's next? I mean, Chan Sung Chung, the Korean Zombie, and Brian Ortega has this ongoing feud for the last year. I mean, they were supposed to fight last year. That didn't materialize. Uh, they've been still feuding on social media. I would like to see a fight. Of course, we're also going to see Zabit for Jair Rodriguez. That should be interesting. Calvin Kattar, of course, he has to fight Dan Ige, I believe, on Wednesday in the main event. He, of course, just knocked out Jeremy Stevens. So, should be interesting. The 145-pound division is really interesting. It has a bunch of contenders. We'll see. Um, but Volkanovski, he took a beating in this fight. It'll probably take a while to recover, but you can see him get one more fight in before the end of the year. And lastly, the main event. A fight that everybody wanted to see. Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, versus Jorge Masvidal. Game Bread took this on 6 days' notice. He flew from Miami to Las Vegas to get tested. Flew to Abu Dhabi. Uh, his head cornerman, Mike Brown, tested positive for COVID. All these things lining up against Jorge Masvidal. How would he do? Not to mention he cut 20 pounds the last week. So how would he do? Well, he has moments, but overwhelming. It was up against the fence. It was takedown. It was foot subs by Kamaru Usman. He just was more conditioned fighter. He had his pace for the fight. You could say that yes, he could come up with this or that affected Masvidal. The bottom line is Usman, he was more prepared. He was more conditioned. He fought his style fight. Now, would have it been different if Masvidal had a full camp? I believe so, but would have Masvidal gotten the win? Maybe, maybe not. I did pick Masvidal to win. I just had this itchy feeling that he was going to get it done, but that was not to be. And people say that, well, if Colby Covington, who was also off their fight, would he have really won or made difference? Now, well, Colby, I still believe he would have won the fight if against Usman if he went to the judges. However, of course, he got stopped. But nonetheless, this was still less than a week had to fly from somewhere to somewhere. I'm not sure if Colby would have had cut much weight as Oswald did, but it's what happened. Obviously, now what's next is they're probably going to try and redo Usman versus Gilbert Burns. When Usman, or excuse me, well, it didn't look like Masvidal or Usman took much damage besides that cut uh, above Masvidal's eye. So I don't think it would be a long layoff for either man. Of course, Masvidal has to redo his contract because he said it was just a one fight real deal. So we'll see where both goes, of course. But still, I would say it was disappointing for a viewer, but that's the way it goes sometimes. They have these stinkers in MMA, and that's just how it goes. So my next topic I want to talk about was ESPN the other day they came out with a poll on the top 10 quarterbacks of the NFL, in which so if laying into next season, well, so they started 1, 2, obviously Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. Now, obviously that was right. To round out the list, they had 3 Aaron Rodgers, 4 Deshaun Watson, 5 Drew Brees, 6 Lamar Jackson, 7 Tom Brady, 8 Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott number 9, and Matthew Stafford number 10. Now, you could argue that Dak and Stafford, while they're really talented, yeah, they could be, but you can argue they're also out of the top 10. Now, what I want to talk about was who, if I had to make the list, what would I change? And besides Mahomes and Russell Wilson, who is the best quarterback in the league? I do not think that is Aaron Rodgers. I don't agree with that with ESPN. I think that Drew Brees, right now you round him up, change him to 3. And yet my pen is out of ink, but whatever. So I would change Drew Brees, number 3. Deshaun Watson at 4. I would swap Lamar Jackson with. No, wait. I would actually put Carson Wentz number 4. That's what I think. Carson Wentz. People don't realize his offense and defense was both deplorable. Besides his own line, which stayed relatively kind of healthy. He willed that team to a 9-7 record. So for that, and yes, Lamar has the MVP, but if Carson Wentz was stayed healthy in 2017, I think he would have been MVP and probably would have been the Super Bowl MVP as well. So for that, I put Carson Wentz number 4, Lamar Jackson number 5. Yes, he was MVP last year, but what? This is my list, okay? Lamar Jackson, number 5. Tom Brady moves one step up to 6. I mean, as a Patriot fan, you're like, people are probably like, really? Tom Brady is 6. Well, look, and I'm a realist. I know Tom Brady didn't look all that well last year, but that was with a lack of weapons at wide receiver and abundance of injuries on the offensive side. So for that, now this year he has more weapons in Tampa Bay, and I feel thrive, and he's still a top 10 quarterback. So for that, I move him one step up to 6. Number 7. So I would move I would have Deshaun Watson there. Yes, Deshaun Watson is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. But he has made a bunch of mistakes, and he has looked high and low at times in the NFL so far as abundance. And his injuries, I'm curious. It's not so much him, it's about the Texans organization right now. So right now I would have him at 7. I would put Aaron Rodgers at 8. No. Yes, Aaron Rodgers. Yes, Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, he looked good last year, but the whole team, the whole Packers team looked good last year. They didn't look great on any part of the ball. So, yeah, I would put Aaron Rodgers 8. You can argue Matthew, for that. That's my opinion. So, Drew Brees is, to me, the best quarterback in the NFL behind Mahomes and Russell Wilson. So there's that. And then going from that to sticking with the NFL, Browns rookie, first round rookie, Jedrick Wills Jr. signed his rookie deal, 4-year contract. I mean, I am still surprised that he fell to 10. I thought he was going to go 4, or no way, actually to the Cardinals. That's how I felt. Because I thought Isaiah Simmons was going to go to the Giants, but, there was that. One wrinkle in a draft day plans can ruin your whole draft. Next, apparently Raheem Mostert of the Niners requested a trade. Raheem Mostert, the guy that steamrolled basically the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship game, has requested a trade. Now, he went undrafted. He said that he was cut from like 7 different teams to make the Niners. He is a talented running back, but I mean, how much was the system in San Fran the product of Raheem Mostert? Because I mean, he was cut by 7 teams, so I mean, same with David Njoku. How much traction are they going to get for Mostert? That'll be a question. Next, we go from that to more UFC news. News on three big fights coming in the future. First off, Thiago Santos versus Glover Teixeira. A key fight at 205 pounds that's going to headline in September. Thiago Santos, of course, he last fought a close title fight against John Jones. Could have won it, but John Jones, he stuck it out. He still won the fight. And Glover Teixeira, he has been sticking around. He has still been relevant at the top of the heap in 205. Obviously, in his last fight, he won a solid fight against Anthony Lionheart Smith. Excuse me, I have a little brain fart. Excuse me about that. And next, you got Cody Stamann. Well, actually, sticking with the light heavyweights, one thing I want to mention is depending on John Jones' situation, I think Dominic Reyes versus Leon Blachowicz is the top fight to make at 205 if Jones does indeed vacate the title. So we go from that to Cody Stamann versus Jimmy Rivera at 135, battle two top bantamweights. Should be interesting to see. Jimmy Rivera, of course, he had a long win streak until he ran into the magician Marlon Moraes and got head kicked for it. So that and could determine a new contender at 135, possibly to face Peter Yan. We'll see. And after that, Greg Hardy found out his next big test since he fought Alexander Volkov, on short notice. Getting his next big test against Khalil Roundtree. Should be interesting. Roundtree is no joke. He has power. He can put your lights out. He has fought, at 205 before. So, should be interesting to see how he does at heavyweight again. I believe he's fought at heavyweight before, to my knowledge, but we'll see how hard he does in that fight, see how his progression goes. Because, the guys he's fought at this point has been relatively no names in this, as far as the sport goes. So, see how he does against a real name in Roundtree. Next up, so apparently for the MLB, another big star has been, or for the Chicago White Sox, their elite prospect from years ago, Michael Kopech. Have to sit out another season due to injury. The White Sox, I'm a fan. Mostly I'm a Mets fan, but yeah, so that's news on another player sitting out for the MLB. We'll see how it affects the White Sox. Probably won't affect them much, but we'll see. Lastly, got news on the NHL. So, the NHL, their return is expected to take place August 1st, and I believe they'll be starting with the qualifying round of the playoffs. And then for the New Jersey Devils, they signed Lindy Ruff as their new head coach, who has a 736, 554, and 78 record as a head coach. Apparently, for the past few years, he's been an assistant coach for the New York Rangers. He led the Sabres to a 1999 Stanley Cup berth. He's a winning coach. The Jersey Devils, I mean, whenever you get a win coach to help an organization, get it again, but when you get a winning coach to help out an organization, it should always help. I'm not the biggest hockey intuitive guy, but I mean, a winning coach should definitely help out any organization. So there was that. A lot of news digested in this episode of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That was the episode today. Covered many sports topics throughout the NFL, NBA, MLB, well, a little bit at the MLB, and some of the NHL. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you're new, like and subscribe. Obviously, I'll be back on Thursday with my NXT review, or excuse me, my AEW review, my NXT review coming on Friday. I'll probably have the video out a little sooner for AEW on Thursday because I have an interview on Thursday, but still, there'll definitely be a review on Thursday. So for that, hope you guys, thank you for joining me today on this podcast. Like I said, like and subscribe. It'll help out, please, and thank you. And I hope you guys enjoy your Monday, and I'll see you all on Thursday.